The marketplace was alive with sound, bright lights, and cruel laughter. The air smelled of dust and sweat, voices rose like waves crashing. In the center of the square stood a wooden stage, rough and cold. On that stage knelt a small alien girl, her head lowered, her hands bound with metal cuffs. She was thin, her clothes torn, and her eyes filled with fear. People shouted from all sides. Their words were sharp like knives. "Look at her, tainted blood," one alien jeered. "She is neither one of us nor one of them," another laughed. The girl's cheeks burned with shame. She wanted to hide, but there was nowhere to run. The auctioneer, a tall alien with gray skin and sharp teeth, lifted his hand for silence. His voice was loud and full of mockery. "Tonight we offer a rare sight," he declared. "A creature of mixed heritage, not pure, not worthy, but perhaps useful for something." The crowd roared with laughter. Their voices shook the air. The girl squeezed her eyes shut, wishing she could disappear. Every laugh felt like a whip against her skin. Every whisper reminded her she did not belong. She remembered the days when she was younger, when she asked her mother why others stared at her with disgust. Her mother always said, "You are special. You are both." But now, kneeling in front of hundreds of eyes, she felt like nothing. The auctioneer pulled her up by the arm, forcing her to stand. He turned her face to the crowd. "See her ears," he sneered. "Too sharp for a human, too small for our kind." He tugged at her arms. "See her eyes, one bright, one dull, a mark of shame." The crowd cheered and shouted cruel names. The girl bit her lip until it bled. She would not give them the joy of seeing her cry, but inside, her heart was breaking. She could hear the laughter echo in her mind. She thought of running, of throwing herself off the stage. But the chains were heavy, and her legs felt weak. She told herself, "Just survive this, just survive tonight." Yet even that promise felt empty. The bidding began. The auctioneer called out, "Who will take this half-blood creature?" A few voices shouted low numbers, not out of interest, but out of cruelty. They laughed as if the bidding itself was a game. "1 coin for the shame," a voice shouted. "2 coins to feed my dogs," another mocked. The girl lowered her head further. Her spirit crumbled with every word. And yet, in the back of the crowd, one pair of eyes did not laugh. A human stood silently, his arms crossed. He had been watching from the shadows. His face was calm, but his eyes burned with anger. He listened to every insult, every cruel cheer. His jaw tightened, his hands clenched into fists. The girl did not see him yet. She only heard the auctioneer's voice rise. 3 coins, 4 coins, who will take this shame home?" The crowd laughed louder. It was not a sale, it was a public humiliation, a game for their entertainment. Her knees shook. She could barely breathe. The girl thought this was her fate, to be laughed at, sold cheap, and forgotten. She whispered softly to herself, "I am nothing." But in the silence between the laughter, the human took one step forward. His shadow moved closer to the light, and though no one noticed yet, the moment of defiance was about to begin. The crowd was restless, their voices rising like a storm. Some shouted insults, others laughed, but all eyes stayed fixed on the stage. The alien girl knelt with her head bowed, trying to disappear. Her chains rattled softly whenever she moved, a cruel reminder that she had no escape. The auctioneer raised his long arms high, demanding silence. His teeth gleamed as he smiled, but there was no kindness in his face. Only greed and cruelty lived there. His gray skin shone under the lights, and his deep voice carried across the square. "Tonight," he shouted, "you will witness the shame of mixed blood." His words dripped with venom. Not pure, not whole, but perhaps fit for labor, or worse. The crowd cheered, eager for the show. Their voices echoed through the cold night air. He pulled the girl to her feet roughly, twisting her wrist until she cried out. Her small frame trembled, but she stood, her eyes lowered, refusing to look at them. "See her weakness," the auctioneer roared. "She cannot even stand without shaking." He pushed her forward, and the crowd roared with laughter. The girl's throat tightened. She wanted to scream, to tell them they were wrong, but her voice betrayed her. It stayed locked inside. She could only endure. The auctioneer circled her like a predator, pointing at her ears, her mismatched eyes, even the scars on her arms. "This is what happens when lines are crossed," he sneered. "A mistake, a curse, a creature no one wants." Every word sank into her like a blade. Her spirit bent lower and lower. The crowd shouted names, ugly names. Some called her half-thing, others dirt. One alien even tossed a rotten piece of fruit at her feet. The girl flinched but did not cry. She would not give them the victory of seeing her tears. The auctioneer raised his hand again. "Let us begin," he said. "What will you give for this pitiful creature? Start low. She is not worth much." His laugh was cruel, hollow, meant only to entertain the crowd. Bids came quickly, not serious, just to mock her. "1 coin, she is worth less than a dog," one shouted. "2 coins, I'll make her clean the mud off my boots," another yelled. The crowd exploded with laughter again. Each bid crushed the girl's heart further. She wondered if this was her destiny, to live as nothing more than a joke. Her eyes blurred, but she blinked hard. She would not fall apart here, not before them. Yet deep in the crowd, one figure did not laugh. The human's eyes narrowed, his fists clenched tighter with every insult. He stepped forward, unnoticed by most. His silence was louder than their noise. His anger burned like fire. The auctioneer lifted his voice again. "3 coins, anyone? 4? She is worth no more than scraps." His words cut through the night, cruel and sharp. The girl swayed on her feet, her strength fading. She whispered to herself, "Just end it. Please end it." Her voice was so small that only she could hear, but the auctioneer was not finished. He leaned down close to her face so the crowd could see her shame. "Tell them," he mocked. "Tell them what you are." The girl stayed silent, her lips pressed tight. She would not obey. The auctioneer's smile grew wider. "Stubborn, is she? Then perhaps the crowd should break her pride." His words were fuel. The crowd screamed louder, shouting cruel ideas. Some wanted her whipped, others wanted her forced to beg. The girl's body trembled, but her spirit, though wounded, still refused to bow. And then, just as the laughter reached its peak, a new voice rose. It was not mocking, not cruel. It was firm, steady, and human. "Enough," the voice said. The crowd froze. Their laughter choked off as they turned. The human had stepped into the light at last. His eyes locked on the auctioneer. His voice carried. Through the silence like a blade, the girl lifted her head, her heart pounding. For the first time, someone had spoken for her. The cruel auctioneer blinked in surprise, but his smile quickly returned. His voice turned sharp. "And who are you to interrupt my sale?" he demanded. The human did not answer yet. He simply stared, unafraid, unshaken. And in that moment, the night began to change. The marketplace was silent. The laughter died as quickly as it had come. All eyes turned to the one voice that dared to interrupt. A human stood there, tall and calm. His presence cut through the crowd like a blade. The alien auctioneer narrowed his eyes, his gray lips curling into a cruel grin. "A human?" he sneered. "What business do you have here?" His words carried both mockery and threat, but the human did not flinch. He stepped closer, each footfall echoing on the stone floor. His eyes never left the small alien girl trembling on the stage. She stared back at him, her chest tight, her heartbeat so fast she thought it would break. No one had ever spoken for her. No one had ever dared. The human's voice was steady. "This ends now," he said. His tone was not loud, but it carried, cutting through the air like thunder. The crowd murmured in shock. Many aliens frowned, others whispered angrily. A few even laughed nervously, as if this was just a fool's game. The auctioneer raised his hands, pretending to be amused. "Ends now?" he said. "Do you not see the crowd? Do you not see the law of this place? She is property, nothing more. His sharp teeth flashed as he laughed. What makes you think you have the right to speak? The human's jaw tightened. His hands curled into fists. His gaze never wavered. Because she is not property, he said firmly. She is not dirt, not shame. She is alive, and she has worth. Gasps spread through the crowd like sparks. No one had dared say such words in this place. Aliens glared, their eyes filled with fury. Some shouted for the human to be silent. Others hissed threats, but he did not move. He stood strong, a wall against their storm, the gay. Earl's knees grew weak. She could barely breathe. Her chest trembled as she watched him. Her heart whispered, "Why? Why would he speak for me?" A single tear rolled down her cheek, but it was not from shame this time. It was from something new, something fragile, hope. The auctioneer's grin faded, replaced with a sneer. "You are bold, human," he hissed. "But boldness here costs blood." He waved toward the crowd. "These people will not stand for your defiance." The voices rose again, angrier now, filled with rage at the outsider's words, but the human lifted his hand, and his voice cut them off. "Then let them hear me," he said. "I will not stand by while you treat her as less than nothing." His words rang clear. Every syllable carried strength. It was not just defiance, it was truth. The girl's chains clinked as she shifted. Her eyes locked on him. In that moment she felt seen, truly seen. For the first time, she was not invisible, not worthless. The auctioneer leaned closer to the human, his voice a low growl. "You risk much by speaking here," he said. "Do you think they will allow you to shame them in their own square?" The human's lips curled into the smallest of smiles. "I do not care," he answered. "Let them hate me, but they will not break her." The words fell heavy in the air. The crowd hissed with anger. Some shouted for him to be thrown out. Others demanded his punishment. But the fire in his voice had struck something deeper, something even the cruel laughter could not fully drown. The girl's heart beat faster. Her hands trembled against the cuffs. She wanted to believe. She wanted to reach out, but fear still whispered, "This will end badly. They will destroy him." Yet hope kept whispering louder. "Maybe, just maybe, this is different." The auctioneer's eyes gleamed with dark amusement. "If you want to defend her, human, then prove it," he said slowly. "Words are cheap. Show us you mean them." The crowd roared in agreement, stamping their feet, shouting for a challenge. The girl gasped, shaking her head. She whispered under her breath, "No, please, and don't do this for me." But the human only looked at her, his eyes calm, strong, unbroken, and with one simple nod he gave his answer. The square erupted in chaos. The defiance had begun. The human's words still hung in the air, sharp and unshaken. For a long heartbeat, the marketplace was silent. Then the silence cracked. The crowd erupted like fire. Voices rose in fury. Some shouted curses. Others demanded punishment. Their anger rolled across the square like thunder. The auctioneer spread his arms wide, feeding the rage. "You see," he cried, "this human insults our honor. He shames our law. He mocks our way." The crowd roared louder, their faces twisted with fury. Some shook their fists. Others stamped their feet against the stone ground. The noise was so heavy, the wooden stage shook beneath the girl's knees. The small alien girl trembled. Her chains rattled softly as she looked around in terror. She had never seen such hate aimed at one person. Her whole life, the hate had been aimed at her. But now, for the first time, someone else bore it. She wanted to cry out, to tell him to stop. But her voice would not leave her throat. The auctioneer's voice slashed through the chaos. "What shall we do with this foolish human?" he shouted. "Shall we let him walk away after insulting us?" The crowd screamed, "No!" Their voices merged into one furious wave. Some shouted for his death. Others demanded he be whipped until he begged for mercy. The girl's chest ached. Her stomach twisted with fear, yet the human stood still. His eyes steady, his jaw locked tight. He did not flinch as threats poured down on him. His silence was stronger than their noise. His calm was sharper than their fury. And when he finally spoke, his voice carried above the storm. "You can shout, you can threaten, but you will not break me," he said. The words cut through the madness like steel. The crowd hissed, their fury boiling hotter. Some aliens tried to climb onto the stage, but guards pushed them back. The auctioneer narrowed his eyes, his grin sharpened. "You are bold, human," he said, "but your defiance means nothing unless you can prove it." The girl's heart pounded. She understood what was coming. A test, a challenge, some cruel demand to silence him. Her breath quickened. She wanted to beg him to stop before it was too late. But when she looked at him, he only gave her a small nod, a silent promise that he was not afraid. The auctioneer raised his hand for silence. His grin widened. "If this human believes she has worth, let him fight for it," he declared. "Let him prove with strength what his mouth dares to speak." The crowd howled with excitement. Their anger turned to hunger for blood. They demanded a fight, their voices pounding like drums. The girl gasped, shaking her head. Her voice finally broke free. "No, don't," she whispered. "Don't do this for me." Her eyes filled with tears, but the human glanced at her, and in his gaze, she saw something unshakable. He was not moved by the crowd's fury. He was not moved by fear. The auctioneer called for warriors. Strong aliens in armor stepped forward, each larger than the human, each carrying weapons and snarls. The crowd cheered, believing this would end quickly. The girl's hands trembled. Her heart screamed inside. "He will die, and it will be my fault." But the human only rolled his shoulders, calm as stone, his fists clenched, his stance firm. He looked at the girl once more, his voice quiet but steady. "Trust me," he said. She felt her breath catch. For a moment, the noise of the crowd faded. For a moment, she believed him. The auctioneer's laughter echoed through the square. "Very well," he roared. "The stage becomes the ring. The fight begins. The crowd shall see the truth. The fury of the Extraterrestrial." Crowd shook the night. But beneath it all, one spark burned brighter. One human stood against them all. And the girl, trembling but watching, began to wonder if hope was not just a dream. The noise of the crowd was deafening. Their roars and chants shook the ground beneath the stage. Warriors sharpened their blades, eager to face the human. The auctioneer stood tall, his grin wide with cruelty. Yet in the middle of all that chaos knelt the small alien girl, her heart heavy, her hands trembling, her eyes followed the human. He stood calm, his fists clenched but steady, his back straight, his face unshaken. The crowd's fury did not move him. He looked like a mountain against the storm, and that image filled her chest with something strange, something she had almost forgotten. Hope. But hope frightened her. She lowered her head quickly. A tear slid down her cheek, hot and silent. She did not want anyone to see. The crowd wanted her broken. They wanted her to weep, and she had promised herself she would never give them that joy. Yet here she was, her body betraying her. She remembered nights when she had cried alone, hidden in the dark corners of the orphan pens. The whispers of the others still haunted her. "Dirty blood," they used to say. Not one of us, not one of them. She had learned to stay silent, to keep her pain inside. But tonight, as the human stood against an entire crowd for her, the walls inside her cracked. The auctioneer raised his hand, calling for order. His voice boomed. "If this human wishes to fight for her, then let the fight begin." The crowd cheered, hungry for blood. Warriors stepped forward, towering over the human, their armor shining, their eyes filled with scorn. The girl gasped softly. Her chains rattled as she shifted. Her small voice whispered, "Please, don't do this." The human's eyes met hers. For a brief moment, the noise of the crowd faded. He gave her a small nod, calm and steady. His lips moved, and though she could not hear the words, she knew what he was saying. "Trust me." That simple gesture made her tears flow. "Hey, you faster." She quickly lowered her head, hoping no one would notice. The auctioneer laughed, enjoying every second. "Look at her," he shouted. "She knows he will fall. She knows this fight will end in her shame once again." The crowd cheered at his words, cruel voices filling the night. The girl bit her lip until it bled. She wanted to scream that they were wrong, but her voice was locked away. She felt torn in two. Part of her wanted him to stop. to walk away before it was too late. She did not believe one human could stand against so many, but another part of her deep inside begged him to fight, begged him to prove them wrong. Her tears kept falling, silent, but endless. The first warrior stepped forward, towering like a shadow. The crowd held its breath, waiting for the first strike. The girl pressed her forehead against her chained hands. She could not bear to watch. She whispered again, "Don't die, please don't die." Her voice shook with fear, yet even as her tears fell, something inside her shifted. For the first time in her life, someone had chosen to stand for her, not against her. The weight of that truth pressed into her heart, stronger than her chains, stronger than her shame. She felt weak, but she also felt alive. The human lifted his fists, his stance ready. His eyes burned with defiance. His body was small compared to the alien warriors, but his spirit filled the ring. The girl raised her head slowly, her vision blurred with tears. And when she looked at him, she no longer saw just a man. She saw a shield, a flame, a promise. The crowd's chant rose again, louder than ever. "Fight, fight, fight!" they screamed. The auctioneer raised his arm high, his grin sharp. "Let it begin!" he roared. The girl's heart pounded in her chest. Her tears fell silently, and deep inside, she prayed for the first time, not for herself, but for him. The air grew heavy as the auctioneer's hand fell. His booming voice rang through the marketplace. "Let the challenge begin!" The crowd erupted, their chants shaking the ground. Warriors stepped closer, circling the human like wolves around prey. The alien girl's breath caught in her throat. Her chains rattled as she shifted. Her eyes darted from the human to the armored warriors. Her heart screamed at her to look away, but she could not. Her gaze was locked on him. The auctioneer sneered, his sharp teeth glinting under the lights. "You speak boldly, human," he said, "but words mean nothing here. Show us your strength. Prove your defiance or fall and be forgotten." The crowd shouted in agreement, their voices like fire. The human stood calm, his fists clenched, his stance solid. He looked small compared to the towering aliens. Their armor gleamed, their weapons sharp, yet his eyes burned with something stronger than steel. He did not step back. He did not falter. One of the warriors stepped forward, his shoulders broad as stone. He held a blade in his clawed hands and snarled, "One strike will end you, human." The crowd cheered, hungry for blood. The girl's lips parted, a whisper breaking free. "Please don't." But her voice was too soft, drowned by the roar of the mob. The auctioneer lifted his hand again. "Wait," he said. "This will not be a simple fight. This will be a test." His eyes gleamed with cruelty. If the human wins, the girl walks free. If he loses, then he belongs to us as well, both of them, property of the crowd. Gasps rippled through the marketplace. Some laughed in delight, others shouted louder. The girl froze, her chest tightening like a cage. She shook her head, her voice breaking. "No, not him too." Her words were swallowed by the noise. The human glanced at her, his face calm, steady. He gave a small shake of his head, as if to tell her no. Ought to fear, that simple look struck her heart like lightning. Her breath hitched, her tears blurred her vision. He was not afraid, not even of losing everything. The auctioneer laughed, his cruel voice echoing. "Do you accept, human?" he taunted. "Or will you crawl away like a coward?" The crowd shouted, "Accept, accept!" Their voices merged into a storm. The human's voice rose above them, steady as stone. "I accept," he said. The crowd gasped, then roared with savage joy. The girl felt her knees weaken. She nearly fell. Her heart screamed, "Why? Why would he do this for me?" The warriors tightened their circle, blades flashing in the light. The human rolled his shoulders, his body loose but ready. His calm in the face of danger spread through the square, shaking even those who had laughed moments before. The girl clutched her chains, her small hands white with fear. Her tears fell freely now. She whispered to herself, "He cannot win, but please, let him live." Yet another voice inside her whispered different words. "He will not fall. He is different." The auctioneer's grin widened. "Then it is done. he declared. Fight, and let the blood decide. The crowd stamped their feet, their roars filling the air. The warriors raised their weapons, ready to strike. The human bent his knees slightly, his fists rising. His eyes burned with fierce defiance. His voice carried softly, almost only for her. "Watch me," he said. The girl's breath caught. Her heart pounded like a drum. The challenge had been set, and in that moment, she knew nothing would ever be the same again. The circle closed around the human. The warriors towered above him, their armored shoulders glinting under the market lights. The crowd pressed closer, roaring with hunger for blood. The air shook with their chants, "Fight! Fight! Fight!" The alien girl clutched her chains. Her hands trembled. Her chest rose and fell in quick breaths. She had seen many fights in this cruel place, but none like this. A single human against armed warriors. It was madness. Yet when she looked at him, she saw no fear, only calm fire in his eyes. The first warrior charged, his heavy boots pounding the ground. He swung his blade down with a roar. The human moved quickly, faster than anyone expected. He ducked low, the blade slicing the air where his head had been. In one smooth motion, he drove his fist into the warrior's side. The strike echoed, sharp and brutal. The alien stumbled back, stunned. Gasps rose from the crowd. Their laughter faltered. The girl's eyes widened, her lips parted in shock. He was not weak. He was not helpless. Another warrior lunged forward, swinging wide. The human sidestepped, grabbing the warrior's arm. With a twist, he used the alien's weight against him, throwing him hard to the ground. The earth shook beneath the impact. The crowd roared in disbelief. Their cries turned from mocking to furious. The auctioneer's grin thinned. His sharp teeth clenched. "Do not hold back," he snarled to the warriors. His eyes burned with anger as he watched his show turn against him. Two warriors attacked together, blades flashing. The human's body moved like water, swift and sharp. He blocked one strike with his forearm, twisting away. His boot slammed into the other's chest, knocking him back. The first warrior raised his blade again, but the human caught his wrist and drove his elbow into the alien's throat. The warrior collapsed, gasping for air. The girl's tears read her vision, but this time they were not only from fear. Her heart raced. She whispered under her breath, "He's winning." The sound of those words felt strange on her tongue, hope mixing with disbelief. The crowd grew louder, but their voices changed. Shock mingled with their rage. They had expected an easy slaughter. Now they watched as one human defied them. Blow after blow, another warrior fell, his blade clattering to the stone ground. The human stood firm, sweat on his brow, his chest rising and falling. Yet his eyes never wavered. They locked onto the girl for a heartbeat, and she felt it. The message he gave without words. "You are not alone." The last warrior stepped forward, larger and more skilled than the others. The crowd cheered wildly, sensing a final clash. His blade gleamed as he swung with speed and power. The human barely dodged, the blade grazing his arm, blood welling from the cut. The girl gasped, her chains rattling as she struggled against them. Her voice cracked. "No!" But the human did not fall. He grit his teeth, pain flashing in his eyes, but not breaking his stance. The warrior swung again, but this time the human caught the blade with both hands, forcing it aside. With a roar, he drove his knee into the warrior's stomach, then his fist rose and crashed against the alien's jaw. The warrior staggered, then fell hard to the ground, unconscious. Silence fell. The crowd stared in disbelief. The human stood in the ring, blood on his arm, his chest heaving, yet unbroken. The girl's breath caught. Her tears fell freely. Her lips whispered a single word, "Impossible." The auctioneer's face twisted in rage. His cruel game had turned into humiliation. The human raised his voice, strong and clear. "She is free," he declared. His words rang through the silent square like a bell. The crowd did not cheer. They did not laugh. They only stared, shaken to their core. The square was frozen in silence. The crowd that once roared with laughter and rage now stood speechless. Dozens of eyes stared at the ring where the human stood, his chest heaving, blood dripping down his arm, yet his stance was firm, his spirit unbroken. The fallen warriors groaned on the ground, some clutching bruises, others unable to rise. They had been proud champions of the marketplace, feared by all. But tonight, they had been struck down by one man, one human. The auctioneer's smile was gone, his gray face tightened, his sharp teeth clenched in anger. This was not how the show was meant to end. His voice cracked as he tried to laugh. "A trick!" he shouted. "It must be a trick!" But his words carried no strength. The crowd no longer believed him. The alien girl trembled on her knees. Her chains rattled softly. She could not look away from him, her eyes filled with tears that blurred her sight, yet she forced them open. She whispered to herself, "He won." The words felt unreal, like a dream too fragile to last. The human turned slowly toward her, his eyes locked with hers. In that gaze she saw no pride, no cruelty, only calm fire. His lips moved with silent words. "You are free," she gasped, her chest tight, her heart thundering in her ears. The auctioneer tried again to regain control. His voice rose, desperate now. "He cannot decide," he cried. "The law belongs to us. She is still ours." But the human stepped forward. His voice rang clear and steady. "Not anymore," he said. "Her chains end here." With one swift move, he reached down and gripped the metal cuffs. The crowd gasped, expecting him to struggle, but the chains snapped open under his strength. The sound rang like thunder through the still night. The girl stared in disbelief. Her hands trembled as the weight of the cuffs fell away. For the first time in her life, her wrists were free. She touched at them gently, her lips quivering. Her body shook as if she could not believe it was real. Tears spilled down her cheeks, but they were not tears of shame. They were tears of something new, something bright. Freedom. The crowd stirred, voices whispering in shock. Some were angry, but others were silent, shaken by what they had witnessed. No one had ever dared to defy the auctioneer. No one had ever broken the chains before. Tonight the human had done both. The auctioneer's rage boiled over, his face twisted with hate. "You will pay for this," he snarled. "Both of you." But his voice cracked. His power had been broken. His threats sounded weak in the shadow of the human's victory. The girl's body trembled as she stood slowly, her legs weak from fear and chains, yet she forced herself to rise. She lifted her head, meeting the eyes of the crowd. For the first time, she did not lower her gaze in shame. She stood beside the human, though her knees shook. The human placed a steady hand on her shoulder. The warmth of his touch spread through her, strong and steady. His voice carried once more, louder than the crowd's whispers. "She is not shame," he said. "She is not dirt. She is alive. She has worth." The words struck the air like lightning. Some aliens turned away, ashamed of their laughter. Others clenched their fists in silence. But none dared mock her now. None dared speak against the man who had broken their warriors. The girl's tears rolled silently, her voice weak but steady as she whispered, "Thank you." The human nodded once, firm and calm. Together, they faced the stunned crowd. The night that began with humiliation now ended with defiance. The human's victory had shaken the entire square, and though danger still lingered, nothing could erase the truth that had been shown. The marketplace was no longer roaring. The crowd stood restless, whispers crawling through the air. The fallen warriors still lay on the ground, groaning and beaten. The auctioneer's face was pale with rage, his teeth bared but powerless. And in the center of it all, the human stood with the small alien girl beside him. Her wrists were bare now, the chains gone. She lifted them slowly, staring at the marks carved deep into her skin. For years those cuffs had been part of her, a prison she could not escape. Now they were broken, lying in the dirt. She touched her wrists gently, her breath shaky. Her heart screamed at her to believe it, but her mind whispered it could not be real. The human's hand stayed on her shoulder, strong and steady. His presence was like a shield around her. He had fought for her, bled for her, defied an entire crowd for her. The question now burned in her chest. Why? Why would he risk so much for someone like her? The auctioneer's voice rose again, desperate and sharp. "Do not be fooled," he shouted. "She is still nothing. She is still shame. One victory does not change her blood." His words clawed at the air, trying to bring back the crowd's anger. Some voices stirred, uncertain, but none were as loud as before. The girl trembled, her tears still wet on her cheeks. Her whole life she had been told she was less, told she was unworthy. The words of the auctioneer echoed the poison she had carried inside for years. But then she looked at the human. His eyes were steady, watching her, not with pity, not with disgust, but with respect. The crowd waited, their eyes fixed on her. The moment was heavy. What would she do? Would she bow her head again and return to silence? Or would she stand? Her lips parted, shaky at first. She whispered, her voice almost lost in the air. She swallowed hard, forcing herself to go on. Her heart pounded so loud. Dully she thought the world could hear it. "I choose," she said softly. The crowd leaned forward, straining to catch her words. She lifted her chin, her eyes glistening with tears but her voice steadier now. "I choose to stand with him." The square gasped, her words cutting through the night like a blade. The human's hand tightened gently on her shoulder, a silent promise that she was not alone. The auctioneer hissed with fury. "You dare speak?" He spat. "You dare claim worth in front of us?" His anger spilled like venom, but his words no longer carried the same power. The girl's voice had broken the silence. Her choice had shattered her chains more than his hands ever could. The crowd murmured. Some sneered, others shifted uncomfortably. A few even lowered their eyes. For the first time her words had weight, not because she was strong, but because she had chosen not to stay silent. The girl's knees shook, but she did not bow. She stood taller, trembling but unbroken. Her tears fell silently, not of shame, but of courage. The human's voice followed hers, strong and clear. "Her choice is her own," he declared, "and I will stand with it." The auctioneer's face twisted, his claws clenched in rage, but he could not stop what had begun. The girl had spoken, and her words had echoed louder than his threats. The human turned slightly, lowering his head so only she could hear. His voice was quiet but firm. "This is your first step," he said. She blinked, her chest trembling. She had never thought she would have a choice, but tonight she had made one. Together, they faced the crowd. The girl's tears glistened under the lights, but her voice, though soft, had carried like thunder. And in that moment, she was no longer only the shamed one, she was the one who chose. The night air was heavy. The crowd stood in uneasy silence, their whispers sharp and nervous. The auctioneer's face burned with fury, his sharp teeth flashing as he snarled. The broken chains still lay on the ground, a symbol that something had changed. And in the middle of the square, the human and the alien girl stood side by side. The girl's choice still echoed in the air. "I choose to stand with him." Those words had cracked the silence like thunder. Her voice, once drowned by shame, had become a spark that could not be ignored. The crowd shifted, some sneering, others uncertain, but none as loud as before. The auctioneer slammed his fist against the stage. "Enough!" he bellowed. "This means nothing. A human cannot change our law. A half-blood cannot change her fate." His words clawed at the night, desperate to pull the crowd back to his side. But the power of his voice was weaker now. The human stepped forward, his presence tall and unbroken. His voice carried steady and strong. "She is free," he declared. "No chain, no mockery, no law written in cruelty will change that." The sound of his words cut through the square like a blade. The girl's heart trembled. She had never imagined anyone would speak such words for her. Her tears shimmered under the lights, but now they fell for a different reason. She no longer wept only for pain. She wept for the truth of being seen. The crowd stirred again. A few shouted curses, but others were silent. A murmur spread. doubt cracking the once united roar. They had laughed at her shame, they had mocked her blood, but now they had seen the impossible. A single human had stood against warriors in chains, and he had won. The auctioneer's rage grew wild. "You will both pay," he spat. "You will not leave this square alive." He raised his hand to call for more guards, but none moved. The guards hesitated, their eyes shifting nervously. They had seen enough. They had no will to face the man who had broken their champions. The human's eyes locked on the auctioneer. His voice was firm. "Your cruelty ends here," he said. "Tonight, everyone has seen the truth. You are not feared. You are not unshaken. You are broken." The crowd gasped. Some shouted in anger, but many could not look away. The girl lifted her head higher, her voice small but clear. "I am not shame," she said. "I am not dirt." Her words carried farther than she expected. Silence fell for a moment. The square struck still by her defiance. The auctioneer trembled with rage, but his power was gone. The human placed his arm gently around the girl's shoulders. His presence was steady, strong, unshaken. Together they turned from the stage, their steps slow but unyielding. The crowd did not stop them. Some glared, some whispered, but none dared block their path. The girl's feet trembled, every step heavy, yet her heart beat with new strength. For the first time, she was not being dragged, not being sold. She was walking freely. The auctioneer screamed behind them, his voice breaking. "This is not the end!" But his words were lost, swallowed by the silence of those who no longer believed. The girl leaned against the human, her voice barely a whisper. "Why did you do this?" she asked. He looked down, his eyes calm, his voice steady. "Because no one should be shamed for what they are." Her tears fell again, but this time they were warm, not bitter. They carried the weight of her past and the light of something new. Together, they walked out of the square, leaving chains, fear, and humiliation behind. That night would be remembered, not as the night of her shame, but as the night a human's defiance shook the crowd.